students, we're going to go over the stomach through the gallbladder. All right, so we've already done a paradox on this, so this should be review. So functions of the stomach, it temporarily stores ingested food. There's some mechanical digestion with the muscular contractions that occur within the stomach, and there's some chemical digestion of food with acid and enzymes, and that is mainly the pepsin that forms from the hydrochloric acid, and that chemically breaks down proteins, and then some salivary amylase from the salivary glands in the mouth will continue to act on the starches, converting them further into sugars if that was not completed in the mouth. Chyme, so once everything is mixed together, the partially digested food is mixed with the acid secretions of the stomach, it is then called chyme. So when you swallowed the food, it was bolus. And then when it's in the stomach and it's been mixed around, it's called chyme. So when you look at your diagram of the stomach, you should see that there's a greater curve. So it's shaped like a J. There's a greater curvature and a lesser curvature. So see if you can find that on your diagram, and feel free to pause the video and look for that. The shape and size can vary from person to person based on their anatomy. There are three parts. The most superior part is the cardia. The fundus is superior to the junction of the stomach and the esophagus. And then the body is between the fundus and the curve of the J. The body is the largest part of the stomach. That's the mixing tank for all the food. So here you can see, here is the body of the stomach right here. So this is going to be, this is the cardia. And you know, the cardia, think of the cardiac sphincter, and then the fundus is over here, and here's the body. And this is going to be the lesser curvature, and here's going to be the greater curvature. So looking at this, to see it a little bit better, this is the cardia. Remember, you're going to have your cardiac sphincter over here. Here's the fundus. And then this is going to be this part here. The rest of it is going to be the body. Now, looking at these structures, ones you have to be familiar with is, you know, this is the longitudinal muscular layer, the circular, and then this is the oblique muscular layer. The rugae here, you can see that is going to help with the churning of the food in the stomach. So for some more mechanical digestion, and then if we went in between those folds, those are the gastric pits that we'll look at in a second. The pyloric sphincter is right here. This is the pyloric part right here of the stomach. And then this is the pyloric sphincter. This is going to lead into the duodenum, which is the first part of your small intestine. So the rugae I showed you, the oblique layer I showed you as well, in addition to the circular and longitudinal layers. The gastric pits, these are shallow depressions. So if we go down from that rugae, that open into the gastric surface, and these are going to have mucus cells at their base, and they actively divide and they help replace superficial cells. The stomach has the gastric gland that's in the fundus, and the gastric gland has those gastric pits, and they have parietal cells and chief cells. And the gastric glands secrete gastric juice a lot, 1,500 milliliters each day. So the rugae right here, if you go and you can see that, if you go down, there are those pits. And then this is going to show you the muscular layer, the submucosa, and this is a mucosa layer. So the gastric pit opening is right here. In the parietal cells, there is an intrinsic factor, and this intrinsic factor gets secreted, and this helps absorb vitamin B12 in the small intestines. It also indirectly secretes hydrochloric acid, which is really important because that hydrochloric acid is going to, after secreted by after pepsinogen is secreted by the chief cells, it converts to pepsin, and pepsin is the active enzyme that helps break down proteins. So again, the chemical digestion in the stomach, there's some from that salivary amylase, a little bit of lipase breaking down lipids, but really it's mainly the proteins. All right, so the hydrochloric acid, the pH of the stomach is really acidic, so it approaches 2. Remember, 7 is neutral, and so the pepsin is going to break down the proteins. And something important to note, our nutrients are not absorbed in the stomach. All right, so that is all for your stomach. The pancreas. Pancreas lies posterior to the stomach, and it's long, and it kind of has all these lobules or little nodule, little bump-looking things, and it extends from the duodenum, which is the first part of your small intestine, towards your spleen. So it is bound to the posterior wall of the abdominal cavity, and let's take a look at it here. So here it is, like kind of yellow like a banana, but it doesn't, it's got these lobules here. And so there's a lot of duct work. So here's your pancreatic duct. And since we're on the digestive system, we're going to talk about the pancreatic duct being used for digestion. So secreting pancreatic juice into the small intestines, which you can see here is the duodenum. The pancreas also has another function. The pancreas is also an endocrine gland as well as a digestive gland. The endocrine gland, it makes insulin, and that helps regulate blood sugar. Also, it also releases glucagon, which helps in the regulation of blood glucose. And you can see where it is relation to the liver. So you can see the bile duct is coming in from the liver, okay, and these ductworks come together. And so we talked about pancreatic cancer a little bit. So person gets the cancer right here, it's really hard to treat because if the ducts being involved. So that endocrine function is to secrete insulin and glucagon, like I just said, and the exocrine function is the digestive function, and that's to secrete alkaline pancreatic juice. So remember, you have an acidic hydrochloric acid filled chyme that is going to go to the small intestine, and the small intestine is not lined with mucus. So pancreatic juice is alkaline, basic, which means it's basic, higher pH, and that is going to help neutralize the acid that comes from the stomach so that the lining of the intestine doesn't get worn away. So there are a bunch of different enzymes. There's an alpha amylase, so there's pancreatic amylase that's going to continue to break down carbohydrates. There's a pancreatic lipase. All right, again, we're seeing this ASE at the end of the word, which means it's an enzyme. They're going to break down lipids. Remember, those are fats. And then there's going to be some proteases that break down proteins. There's going to be nucleases. Sorry, I skipped this one up here. That's going to break down different nucleic acids like RNA and DNA. And peptidases, which are breaking down peptides, which are how proteins are held together. There's a lot more, and you don't have to memorize all these. You just have to know that basically that pancreatic juice, there's going to be carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids and nucleic acids that get broken down. Your liver is your largest visceral organ. It's in your right hypochondriac and epigastric regions. It can extend into the left. People's livers can be quite large. It performs essential metabolic and synthetic functions. The anatomy has blood vessels that come together called the porta hepatis, and nearly 1/3 of the blood supply is arterial blood from the hepatic artery proper. Right, so there's a hepatic portal system, and so our blood comes in, our blood circulates, and then it goes through the hepatic portal system to further filter out the blood. When you hear hepatic, it's referring to the liver. So hepatocytes are liver cells. So this is showing you, the liver, how big it is. Here's your stomach. Here's a spleen. This is all liver. So here's a right lobe, left lobe. There's this ligament. There's another ligament here. There's 3 ligaments. And then this is where the gallbladder is, kind of like a little pea that sticks out from the liver. And then here you can see that porta hepatis. So here's the bile duct, and then here's the hepatic artery and vein. For digestion, the liver secretes bile. Bile emulsifies fats, so it breaks down large fats into small fats. There are hepatic ducts, and they are connected from the right and the left side, and then they come together. So there's one from the right, one from the left. They come together, and they form a common hepatic duct. And then bile either is going to enter the bile duct into the intestine, or the cystic duct to the gallbladder, and the gallbladder will then store that bile. The cystic duct is joined from the bile duct, and again, that is to the gallbladder. Common hepatic duct is where the 2 come together. So here we can see this. So here is the right hepatic. Here's the left hepatic. This is the common hepatic duct, or it's also called the common bile duct. And then it forms into the bile duct. This coming from the gallbladder here is the cystic duct. This is the bile duct. The cystic duct is going to go, from the gallbladder. Bile duct is going to go, you can trace it all the way around into the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. This is just another cool picture. Your liver has a ton of functions. All right, we're really only going to discuss the digestive function right now, and that is to secrete bile, and the bile is going to emulsify fats. So here we go. Bile salts, they break large lipids droplets into small ones. It's known as emulsification. So if it's large to small, that is going to be mechanical digestion. That needs to happen, so then the lipase that comes from the pancreas that goes into the small intestine can then chemically break it down. Lastly, your gallbladder. It's a little pear-shaped muscular sac that stores that bile before it gets secreted into the small intestine. And when we dissect, sometimes it's like embedded into that lobe of the liver. It'll just depend on our specimens. And it can get released, the bile can get released when it's stimulated by a hormone called cholecystokinin. And so without that, there's a sphincter that just keeps the bile all in its place. When the chyme enters the duodenum, the cholecystokinin is released. And, it kind of senses like, hey, these fats need to be emulsified. Okay, and that is it.